Coming up on Network Africa, developments out of Ethiopia as 9 anti-government groups, including the Tigray People's Liberation Front and Oromo Liberation Army, agree to form an alliance against Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's administration. While climate discussions continue in Glasgow, Tunisia's lagoon farmers cling on as sea levels rise. Plus, final results from the South Africa municipal election that speak volumes about how people feel about their leaders. Network Africa starts right now. A warm welcome to our viewers here in Nigeria, across the continent and around the world. Thanks for joining us. I'm Amarachi Ubani in Lagos. We begin with developments out of Ethiopia. First, 9 anti-government groups, including the Tigray People's Liberation Front and the Oromo Liberation Army, have agreed to form an alliance against the government of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Pressure is mounting on the Prime Minister as rebel forces advance towards the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa. A spokesperson for the TPLF says taking over the capital is not the goal. Instead, it's all about breaking the siege, referring to the year-long conflict in Tigray, which has left thousands of people dead, displaced more than 2 million people from their homes and fueled farming. The fighters have been pushing south towards the capital in recent months and on Thursday announced they were joining forces with several armed groups and political actors in an effort to unseat Mr. Abiy in a safe transition. The Ethiopian international partners have been calling for an end to hostilities. A formal announcement is expected today from Washington, D.C., but it could undermine the efforts of the U.S. Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa, Jeffrey Feltman, who is currently in the country and has begun meeting senior Ethiopian government ministers to push for negotiations. In the meantime, Addis Ababa Police Commander Fasika Fenta says the rebel forces' claim about being near the capital is just propaganda. Still unclear, though, where the rebels have firepower to take over the city, and there are conflicting reports as to how close they are to the capital. Mr. Fasika says the groups are overstating their positions. He also claims Addis Ababa is currently under protection and the city continues operating peacefully. The government is not backing down, in the meantime insisting instead to continue to fight against the Tigrayan rebel forces despite growing international calls for a ceasefire. The government released a statement on social media saying the country is fighting an existential war and would not crumble under foreign propaganda. This comes as African nations, the European Union and the United States have reiterated calls for a truce and talks to end the conflict. The Ethiopian government says it is on the brink of victory. The Tigrayan forces have been advancing towards the capital, seizing key towns in recent days. We're also learning that thousands of people today turned out for protests across the Oromia and Gambela regions of Ethiopia. They were organized by the regional government in support of itself and its defense forces in the ongoing conflict. Demonstrators carried banners denouncing foreign pressure. Take a detour now to talk the climate talks in COP26 going on in Glasgow. Today is Youth Day amidst protests planned for the day. Here in Africa, Tunisia specific, lagoon farmers are facing the real-world impacts of climate change as rising sea levels, hotter weather and scant rainfall threaten to wipe out crop and an agricultural system dating back to the 17th century.
Dotted among wetlands on Tunisia's coast is this patchwork of tiny man-made islands that stretch out towards the Mediterranean. Shored up by sandbanks inside the lagoon, they are home to a centuries-old system of agriculture that climate change now threatens to wipe out. Ali Garci has farmed the plots in the Gar El Mel wetlands north of Tunis for 20 years. Relying on a layer of fresh water that feeds his plants above a saltwater base, he grows potatoes, onions and tomatoes. But with sea levels and temperatures in the area rising and rainfall below average, his yields are dropping.
There is shortage in the quantities of rain, and this definitely negatively affected the quantity of our product in general. That means the production is weaker compared to years when the quantities of rain were respectable.
Invented in the 17th century, the Ramli agricultural system, Arabic for sandy, irrigates crops entrenched in a mix of sand and manure via their roots. Its water shortage-resistant methods gained global attention last year when the United Nations added Goromel to its list of agricultural heritage systems of global importance. But the system's reliance on a fragile balance of rain and sea tides means it faces unprecedented challenges.
The per capita share in Tunisia was supposed to be a little more than 420 cubic meters, which decreased during the summer to 255 cubic meters. On the other hand, there are expectations from climate modeling that the percentage of these precipitation could decrease by 30%, and this could threaten the continuity of many agricultural systems in Tunisia.
In August, a heat spike across northern Tunisia brought temperatures to a scorching 120 degrees. Meanwhile, rainfall fell to below two-thirds of its long-term average, a shortfall that climate modeling suggests could become permanent. Globally rising sea levels as temperatures increase pose a further threat. One climate expert tells Reuters the Mediterranean will rise and seep into areas surrounding this rich agricultural area, which could make the soil salty and ruin the crop and take a centuries-old system with it.
And the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, says the latest coup in Sudan is deeply disturbing and betrays the courageous and inspiring revolution of 2019, while also contravening international human rights law. She says the country's military should refrain from using deadly force against protesters and demanded the immediate release of all those arrested. Her comments come as Sudan's military chief, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, agrees to accelerate the return to a transitional government following talks with the United States and the United Nations. The UN Special Envoy for Sudan, Volker Perthes, says the discussions have yielded the outline of a potential deal to reverse last month's coup, including the restatement of the deposed Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok. In Somalia now, the AU envoy Simon Mulongo has been declared persona non grata in order to leave the country within 7 days. Mulongo is Deputy Special Representative of the African Union for Somalia. He's accused of engaging in activities that were incompatible with the mandate of AMISOM. A state-owned TV station says the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mohammed Abdrissak, said Somalia will hold accountable AMISOM personnel, particularly those at the leadership level, who are expected to be beyond reproach in their integrity as they discharge their duty under the UN-AU mandate. Prince Charles, the Prince of Wales, has spoken to Ugandan climate activist Vanessa Nakate, who's been attending the climate conference in the Scottish city of Glasgow. Prince Charles said they both spoke about the role young people can play in ensuring the health of the planet for future generations. Ms. Nakate is among a new generation of campaigners against global warming, who also include Swedish environmental activist Greta Thunberg, who have been among the participants in the ongoing COP26 conference in Glasgow. The Ugandan activist has been the leader in a big campaign to save Congo's rainforest, which is facing massive deforestation. Final results from the South Africa municipal election are out. They speak volumes how voters are feeling about the elected leaders. Voter turnout was relatively low, with about 12 million people out of 26 million registered on the roll.
Less than half of the registered 26 million voters cast their ballots in South Africa's local government elections on November the 1st. And here are the official results.
In terms of the 213 municipalities that were contested, the African National Congress achieved a majority of 161 municipalities. The Democratic Alliance achieved a majority of 13 municipalities. And the Inkatha Freedom Party achieved a majority in 10 municipalities. And in 66 municipalities, no party achieved a majority, which are now deemed as hung councils. We congratulate the 10,461 councillors who have won the right to serve our people.
President Cyril Ramaphosa, who was also at the results ceremony last night, appealed to all parties to work together in the interest of the people.
If we are to make this a new and better era, we as leaders must put aside our differences and work together in a spirit of partnership, of cooperation, of collaboration, and common purpose in the interests of the people of South Africa.
As expected, near winners, near losers, as well as watchers are spinning their own interpretation of the outcomes from their own perspectives.
I think that we've been able to turn a corner, but there is some room for introspection. And I think we need to look carefully at where voters have sent us messages and unpack that and see how we can do better to ensure that we can win back the trust of people there who did not necessarily vote for us in this election.
We know that the voter turnout was a little bit lower. The ANC was able to garner over 10 million votes across the different councils. For that, we are humbled.
I think what you can see, because in the midst of COVID, but also the sense that people are sick and tired of empty promises. I think people, more than anything, did not reject democracy. They rejected the big parties. And the big parties failed to turn out their people. And to me, where you get independent candidates, you get community associations that were able to drive the change going forward. And I think that, to me, is an exciting prospect.
Coalition will be the buzzword in the next 14 days, which is the time the parties have to form governments. It will make an interesting watch as egos hopefully step back for public interest to take center stage. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Betty Dibia, Channels Television News.
We'll have more analysis on the municipal elections in South Africa, but here in Nigeria, recovery efforts continue at the site of the collapsed building in Ikoyi, Lagos, with a number of government agencies on hand. According to the Lagos state government officials, the total number of bodies has risen to 37. Even with a high death toll, some family members are still waiting to see their loved ones. In the meantime, the Standards Organization of Nigeria is advocating strong sanctions for all standards infractions following the collapse of the 21-story building on Gerrard Road. It follows the commencement of an investigation into the materials used for the structure and possible reasons why it might have collapsed. Samples of iron rods, concrete mix, and other materials are already being taken for laboratory tests and analysis.
We are looking at a time where Nigerians should voluntarily on their own begin to obey what we call standards in all you do, in your behavior, even in the preparing the food you eat in your house. When that begins to happen, then we will not see things like this. This is definitely avoidable. It has happened. It means something went wrong during the construction. But for us to ascertain what actually went wrong, we have to get the material, the samples of the material used here, the iron rod, the slab, the beams, and all that, and carry out a detailed analysis in the lab. Then we'll be able to tell you what technically went wrong and led to this.
Meanwhile, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, is debunking claims made by an online newspaper that he owns the land upon which the collapsed Ikoyi building stood and that he intervened with regulatory authorities in Lagos to unseal the property when it was previously sealed. According to his media aide, Laolu Akonde, the Vice President has publicly declared all property and assets he owns when he assumed office. He says the Vice President is saddened by the events of November 1st and also condoles with the families and relatives of those who died. Mr. Akonde described the story linking the vice president to the collapsed building as not only vicious, but inhumane and false. Professor Shibaju denies association with collapsed Ikoyi building. According to a statement, the wickedness and viciousness of a lie seeks to utilize a tragedy where so many people have lost their lives, even as rescue efforts are ongoing, and in wanton disregard to the feelings and untold grief of their loved ones for political gain, reveals dangerous desperation as well as the heartlessness of the perpetrators of such despicable lies. A statement says the Vice President has already referred the said publication to his lawyers for necessary legal action. We have more stories coming up on Network Africa Plus. This up ahead after the break, a panel always judges beauty pageants, and most beauty pageants are for women. So what happens when the men are the ones on the catwalk? A different story playing out in a festival in Niger. Stay with us. Welcome back to Network Africa. We can bring you more on the municipal election results released in South Africa, trailing what looks to be an interesting political landscape in the country going forward. Our channel's television correspondent Brian Pugeni spoke to political analyst Professor Sipamandla Zonde of the University of Johannesburg on the political landscape and what to expect from political parties moving forward.
We are getting a lot more awareness among citizens of their power to change the system and their power to express whatever they feel about the system. And they are doing this by staying away, choosing not to participate. Non-participation isn't always simply apathy. Sometimes it's a form of urgency, it's a form of signaling. It's a form of saying we have been voting for long, but it has not led to change. It has not changed the job situation, changed our access to food, access to basic services. It has not changed how we relate with politicians and leaders and stuff. So we choose to withdraw and hold our vote and all of that. But they've also demonstrated it by switching vote, which is how parties then take over votes from others and take over counters from others. We've seen a lot of parties taking votes from others, and there's a clear sign that people have switched votes, which is also a form of exercising their citizen power. We've also seen the emergence of new candidates, especially independent candidates, and they've done well. In some cases, civic organizations have won wards and in increasing numbers. And fourthly, we have seen citizens forcing political parties to work with each other because both for citizens who decide to stay away from the elections, there may be a number of them who think that there is no better party, so I don't switch votes. But also for those who voted and decided to split their vote and forcing coalitions. And as we see right now, it's also the voter expressing their interest in seeing improvement in the manner in which things are. But lastly, definitely it seems very clear that issues of access to services, issues of effectiveness of local government on the ground, changing the lives and experiences of people, have impinged on voting patterns this time a lot more clearly.
What kind of coalitions are we expecting to see later on?
Still, the ANC and the DA have the best chance of constituting the coalition government with smaller parties. Only in a few cases do they have to then go with the other big party, their big competitor, either the EFF or or the ANC and the DA and the ANC, and all that. But they have choices in a number of cases where they can just put in smaller parties, your Action SA, your IFP, your FF Plus, and other smaller parties, and constitute a coalition made up of the big party and smaller parties. We're likely to see quite a bit of that, because the big parties want to avoid the other big parties because they have a demand, they are hard to please, there's always friction and stuff like that. They're likely to go with the smaller parties. And that is what worked for the DA in its last 2 years of government in Tshwane. That's what worked for the ANC in its last coalition government term in Ekurhuleni. It also worked in Msimahulu and other places. So it is likely to be a pattern that we would see, just as it also did with the DA in Gqeberha, Port Elizabeth, the former Port Elizabeth. So it is a pattern we're likely to see. Only a few cases where we might see the big parties working with each other. In that case, it seems to me that the ANC and EFF would be a better pairing than any other. And then also again, the DA and the Action SA would be better pairing. What is interesting about both cases is that this will be coalition between a mother party and an offspring of that party, where there was tensions at the point of departure. But parties would be forced to control their passions and their feelings and think about what is in their best interest in order to participate in government going forward. Because many parties will now have to be able to tell the voters in 2024, this is how we behaved in government. It's not going to be enough to say this is what we will do once we're in government. No, it will be our record speaks for itself. That is why the campaign for 2024 begins on Monday.
A young Nigerian entrepreneur, Adekunle Daniel, has developed a Bitcoin ATM and will enable Bitcoin investors engage in financial transactions securely. The BTM, which is similar to traditional automated teller machine, is easy to operate. It works in a bi-directional way as it allows users buy and sell Bitcoin directly via the internet. Watch.
When one visits a traditional automated teller machine, also known as ATM, it's expected that one inserts a debit card to withdraw or deposit cash. But at this Bitcoin ATM, you can only buy or sell Bitcoin using cash. Every day, the number of cryptocurrency users and investors increases as it gains worldwide acceptance, and so is the same for Bitcoin, the most used cryptocurrency.
So once I get this QR code, I put it.
This has led to a number of developments and innovations like the Bitcoin ATMs to make the exchange process more convenient and secure for users. Adekunle Daniel, a young entrepreneur with knowledge in blockchain technology development, has designed and developed a Bitcoin ATM, the first in Nigeria.
So essentially, I was trying to solve a major problem, which is turning physical money to a digital money, because Bitcoin cryptocurrencies are digital assets. So I was looking for a way to bring that digital asset closer to the people in real time.
Bitcoin machines work in similar fashion as the traditional ATMs, as they allow users to engage in financial transactions. However, they are yet different in that they are not connected to a bank account. Instead, they are linked to a Bitcoin exchange via the internet, which allows users to buy and sell Bitcoin directly and instantly.
I did few research, got into a few components, and then trained software to recognize Naira, fake Naira, and a whole lot. It took me a few years to do that. So I want to buy digital assets.
The BTM works simply. All one needs to do is verify yourself by inputting your mobile phone number into the machine, after which a verification code by text is received to be entered into the machine. Once logged into the BTM, one can decide to buy or sell. To buy, you insert cash into the machine. A QR code is generated from your crypto wallet on your phone, which is scanned to receive the Bitcoin. And to sell, you can send Bitcoin from your digital wallet to the QR code by the ATM. The Bitcoin ATM is connected to the internet and it comprises of a monitor, QR scanner, bill acceptor, and dispenser, all tied together via software to make Bitcoin transactions convenient and secure. Bitcoin ATMs can be unidirectional, that is, you can either convert your BTC into fiat currencies or buy BTC, and it can be bidirectional, which allows you to do both. This Bitcoin ATM by Adekunle Daniel offers the two-way function, and with the increased adoption of cryptocurrencies, we might be seeing more of these BTMs around.
Finally on the program, a beauty pageant with a twist. We're off to Niger, where traditional beauty contest in the West African country is judged by women. Makeup, great dancing skills, and intricate outfits are just a few things the young men of Wudibis must have in their arsenal if they want to attract the interest of the all-female jury.
Their faces painted with yellow, red, and white clay. 22-year-old Beji and his friends put the finishing touches to their outfits using beads and other accessories on their intricate outfits. Preparing for a traditional beauty contest known as Geriwol, it's men who dress up and compete, while women pick the winner. This age-old traditional festival is held every year in Niger by Wudabi men and an all-female jury. The contestants dance for hours for the women, whose criteria, amongst others, is to judge the men's suitability as lovers or husbands. This year, Beji is optimistic about his chances.
This time, I think I am going to win. Because my friends here are old. Their time has passed, whereas I am very young and I am handsome.
To attract the attention of the jury, the men must also be tall and slender and have facial symmetry and good teeth.
The women choose the men because only a woman can recognize the most handsome, the most slender, the one with the beautiful eyes for marriage. It's us women that choose our husband.
Each member of the jury chooses her favorite contestant and can take him as her lover, even if both are already married.
Traditions and cultures across the continent, pretty interesting. Thanks for watching Network Africa. I'm Amarachi Ubani.